My name is Travis Boone. You wouldn't think much if you saw me on the street, just another guy in jeans boots and a face that looks like it's halfway through a repair job. I've got the kind of smile that only shows up when I mean it, which is rare in a voice people mistake for calm when really it's just tired. I used to be a roofer. Now I work in revenge. And it all started the day my father died and someone stole his house before the dirt had even settled on his grave. I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened. Not the version that sounds good on paper. Not the version they tell at church when they're trying to smooth over the edges. The real story. The one with forged documents, fake sympathy, and a cousin who thought I was too soft to matter. A reality check says, if I go, you'll be cooled for skipping this part. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the Final Revenge channel. But only if you really like what I have to say here. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it could be the ultimate sweet revenge. I got the call on a Monday morning. It was raining, the kind that taps on the windshield like it's got something to say. I pulled off to the shoulder outside a gas station just outside Dovetail Ridge and let the call ring through the car's speakers. It was Janine, the hospice nurse. He went peacefully, she said, like that made a dent in anything. You should come by before they take him. I didn't answer, just stared out the window counting the drips. There's something numb about watching a person vanish from your life without ceremony. No thunderclap, no dramatic music, just a dull sentence over static. I drove straight there. The house was quiet, too quiet. His tools were still lined up in the garage like he'd just stepped out for a sandwich. His boots by the door, the smell of oil and soap in the bathroom. That was the last day it felt like home. 2 days later, the will vanished. Literally, one day it was with the county office. The next, missing paperwork. Must have been misfiled. I knew what misfiled meant. It meant somebody paid someone to pretend it didn't exist. I wasn't exactly surprised. Dad never trusted banks. Never trusted lawyers either. Most of his documents were handwritten, signed and stored in a locked metal box under the kitchen floorboard. The same box that was missing when I returned the next morning. Only one person had a key to the house besides me. Kyle, my cousin. If you've never had a relative who smelled opportunity the way raccoons smell garbage, I envy you. Kyle was the type to sell you a lawnmower with no blades and call it a rustic experience. He showed up at the memorial in a pressed shirt and crocodile tears. Said Travis, I just want what's fair. Fair? He used that word the same way loan sharks use the word interest. Within a week, he'd filed for emergency probate with a new version of Dad's will. Notarized 3 days after his death, giving him full title to the house. The judge didn't even blink, signed off like it was just another Tuesday. I sat there in court, teeth clenched so tight my jaw popped. Kyle smirked as he walked past me, clapped a hand on my shoulder and whispered, it's just business. That night, I didn't go back to the house. Didn't sleep either. I parked in the lot behind Roy's Hardware and stared at the ceiling of my car, heart ticking like a time bomb. That house was supposed to be mine. Dad said so every year since I was 15. We fixed the pipes together, retiled the bathroom, built a new deck when Mom got sick and needed sunshine more than anything. It wasn't a house. It was him. And Kyle took it like it was a coupon in the Sunday paper. A week later, the locks were changed. I didn't even get to say goodbye to the attic. Kyle left a voicemail that said, don't make this weird, man. You got the tools. You'll land on your feet. He was right about one thing. I did have the tools, just not the kind he expected. I spent that first week in limbo, half mad, half frozen. I slept in my truck outside town, brushing my teeth in gas station sinks and eating whatever came shrink-wrapped in plastic. Most nights, I just stared at my cracked windshield, trying to decide whether it was worth it to punch it all the way through. But on the 5th night, something clicked. It wasn't rage. Not really. It was clarity. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to sue. I was going to learn. And I was going to make sure Kyle never saw me coming. I applied for a job at First Cedar Bank. Entry-level analyst. No glamour, no flash, just data. They didn't even ask about college, just wanted to know if I could navigate Excel and show up on time. I said yes to both. Truth was, I'd been doing basic finance for years on my own. Dad didn't believe in credit cards, but he sure as hell taught me how to read interest schedules, amortization charts, and balance sheets. Roofing paid the bills, but numbers made sense in a way people didn't. Within 3 months, I had access to internal systems. Nothing major, just data entry loan applications, underwriting assistant tasks. But I saw patterns. Mortgage portfolios. What loans were bundled, sold, shifted. What departments had discretion. I listened, took notes, said little. They thought I was quiet. Really, I was just sharpening my knives. Kyle, meanwhile, turned Dad's house into a frat boy fantasy. The porch was painted black, I swear. Black, like the house was going to a funeral for its own dignity. Loud music, parties. A flag on the deck that said, "Saturdays are for legends." I watched it happen through public posts, tagged photos, neighborhood message boards, where even the local pastor said, "Kyle's turning into an eyesore." No one knew I was watching. Not yet. At the bank, I made myself useful. Volunteered for spreadsheet cleanup. Worked late. Learned which portfolios were troubled, the term they used for homeowners falling behind. Watched how delinquent accounts were repackaged, sold to third parties, how shell companies could quietly own your mortgage without you ever knowing who was behind it. I asked one of the senior analysts once casually, "How hard is it to buy into a pool?" He laughed. "You got a few grand, a lawyer, and no conscience. Pretty easy." That night I didn't sleep, but for a different reason. I had a roadmap. 2 months in, I found Kyle's name in our system. He and Tara, his girlfriend turned co-signer, had taken out a second mortgage. Adjustable rate. 30 years. Already 2 months behind. I sat at my desk with that screen open for a full 10 minutes. Then I opened a new tab. Searched for an attorney. A very specific kind of attorney. One who specialized in quiet asset acquisitions. By winter, I had enough to make the first offer. Not to Kyle. To the investment group, holding the lien on his house. I used a newly registered LLC Boone Equity Holdings. Classy, right? The paperwork cost me $470. The irony, it was less than what Kyle owed in late fees. And by January, the mortgage belonged to me. The first time Kyle got a letter from Boone Equity Holdings, I bet he didn't even blink. Just another notice. Another envelope among pizza coupons and furniture catalogs. I pictured him tearing it open in that awful kitchen he'd remodeled in Vegas Chrome, not even reading past the first paragraph before tossing it on the counter. But he should have read it, because it said this: "Your mortgage has been acquired. Effective immediately, Boone Equity Holdings is your new servicer. Contact us within 15 days to avoid penalties." It was the calm. And before a storm he never saw coming. And I waited. He didn't respond in 15 days, or 30. That was perfect. Because at 31, I sent him the next letter. Notice of payment acceleration. That's bank speak for we're done playing. Kyle owed over $9,000 in missed payments, interest, and fees. He had 30 days to pay in full, or we'd proceed with legal recovery. This time I knew he read it. Because 2 days later, I got a voicemail. Blocked number. Familiar voice. "Hey, whoever you are, Boone, or whatever. There's got to be some mistake. This is Kyle Miller. I live at 708 Merritt Drive. I think you sent something to the wrong address." He paused, then added, "Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I sent a second notice. Certified mail. Track delivery. Same message bolded this time. "This is not an error. Pay or vacate." I waited 3 weeks. Silence. Then a knock at my apartment door. A knock like someone unsure whether to beg or threaten. I opened it slowly. There he was. Kyle, wearing the same bomber jacket he'd stolen from me in high school and said I forgot. He looked pale, eyes darting, fake grin already slipping. "Travis." I said nothing. His mouth opened, then closed. He blinked. "You're Boone Equity." Still I said nothing. He ran a hand through his hair. "Dude, you bought my mortgage." I let him sit with the truth. It was the best kind of silence. He started talking fast. "Look, man, it's not personal. I thought you were done with the house. And I had no idea this would spiral like this." I stepped aside, let him inside. He walked into my living room like it might explode. "I can pay," he said. "I just need time." "You don't want to foreclose, right?" "That's not what this is about." I smiled. First time in weeks. "It's exactly what this is about." He left without finishing his soda. I didn't shake his hand. Didn't even say goodbye. Just opened the door and held it until he walked out. 30 days. That's all he had. And every day that ticked by, I watched the panic settle into his shoulders, watched the party stop, watched the porch light stay off. Every silence was louder than a scream, and I didn't have to say a word. Foreclosure doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in like mold, quiet, steady, irreversible. If you don't deal with it early. Kyle didn't, because Kyle never thought rules applied to him. Not when we were kids, not when he stole the house, and not now, even with me holding the deed like a loaded weapon. On day 31, I filed the paperwork. Non-judicial foreclosure, expedited under the delinquency clause in his mortgage. He had no legal grounds to fight it. Not anymore. Not after missing 5 payments. Not with me holding every dotted I and crossed T of his obligations. But I didn't gloat. Not yet. I waited. He tried calling again, left 5 voicemails in one night. They ranged from pitiful to angry. Travis, this is insane. You're seriously going to kick me out. Come on, man. We're family. You don't even want the house. You just want to hurt me. That last one was almost right. I didn't want the house. I wanted him to know he never truly owned it. He just borrowed time, and time had come collecting. Grace asked me once, "Why don't you just sell the debt and walk away?" She was one of 2 people who knew the full story. She worked with me at the bank, ran numbers better than anyone, and always wore sharp lipstick like it doubled his armor. I told her, "Because if I walk away, he thinks he wins, and this isn't about real estate." She said, "Then what's it about?" I answered, "Memory," and she didn't ask again. Kyle finally sent an offer, through a lawyer, a laughably low cash settlement with a plea to avoid the public embarrassment of foreclosure. I rejected it, sent back one line, "Payment in full or possession surrendered." His lawyer called the next morning and tried to reason, said things like mitigating damages, family precedent, and reputational risk. I said he forged a will. The line went quiet. Then he hung up. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for April 3rd. One bidder. Me. I bought it for $6. Symbolic. $1 for every year Kyle lived there after stealing it. And when the paperwork finalized and the title transferred back to my name, I didn't throw a party. I didn't post it online. I just walked to the porch, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. It smelled like beer mold and regret. But underneath all that, still my father's house. Still ours. Still home. Hippo. I walked through the rooms like a ghost, returning to its body. Kyle's stuff was gone. He left in the night. No note. Just a broken chair on the back patio and an old hoodie in the closet. I sat on the floor, ran my fingers across the scratched wood, and I said aloud to the empty room, "I told you I'd come back." And the silence answered, "Took you long enough. There's a strange sound when a house exhales. It's not literal, more of a feeling. Like the walls ease back into place, like the floorboards stop holding their breath. That's what it felt like when I stood in the living room again. The same living room where I learned how to change a tire, where Dad used to read me westerns in that gravel voice of his. Same room where Kyle threw a kegger the night he celebrated the will. Now it was mine. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. I felt responsible. I didn't move in right away. Didn't feel right. Instead, I spent my evenings there in silence, one repair at a time. The faucet in the kitchen had been leaking for years. I fixed it in 20 minutes. The upstairs toilet whined when flushed bad fill valve. Replaced. I changed out the busted porch light, re-nailed 2 warped floorboards, and tossed a mattress on the floor of what used to be my bedroom. The closet still had the height chart. Travis, age 9. Travis, age 12. Travis, age 15, in Sharpie way, too proud. I ran my fingers over the marks, each one a moment Dad swore I was getting taller too fast. I blink and you're another inch, he'd say. I blinked again, and I was here, 33 years old, holding the keys to everything he tried to protect. One afternoon, I found a dusty shoebox behind the water heater. Inside were receipts, photos, and a single envelope labeled, "For Travis." I sat on the steps and opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was the original will. Dad had handwritten it and then stapled a notarized version behind it, signed, dated, and filed away, like he knew someone would try something slick. I laughed. Too late, Dad. I already took it back. Still, I filed it in a new folder labeled Legacy. I called Grace that night. Told her I was going to do something big. Define big, she said. I want to start a fund for people like me who get blindsided by family or banks or both. A way to keep the roof over their heads. She didn't laugh, didn't even pause, just said about time. And that's when the idea was born. The Millard Legacy Fund, named after my dad, born in his house, built for people who'd never get a second chance, unless someone handed it to them with clean terms and no judgment. I applied for the 501c3 status 2 weeks later, used the house as the base of operations. Not flashy, not complicated, just solid. Like Dad, like the beams we put in ourselves back in 0-1 when the old joists cracked in the ice. On them, I didn't tell Kyle. Didn't need to. He'd already blocked me on everything. But I had the sneaking suspicion he was still watching. He'd know soon enough, because the house wasn't just a symbol now. It was a headquarters, and from it, I was going to fix more than plumbing. I was going to fix the system that let people like him win for so long. Word got around faster than I expected. First, it was just a whisper at the bank. Grace overheard someone saying, "You hear what Travis Boone's doing with his dad's old place?" Then, it was the neighborhood Facebook page where someone posted a blurry photo of me sweeping the porch like I was performing an ancient ritual of property reclamation. Then came the knock on the door. Not Kyle. Worse. His mom, my Aunt Cheryl. She showed up in oversized sunglasses and a trench coat like she was hiding from TMZ, clutching a folder full of just some documents that were clearly printed that morning. "I don't want to cause drama," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "But I think it's only fair we revisit the will. Kyle's been through a lot lately." I didn't say a word, just pointed to the wall where the new plaque was being mounted. The Millard Legacy Fund headquarters. A place built by honesty, rebuilt with purpose. She looked at it, then back at me. "Travis, this doesn't have to be permanent." I handed her an envelope. Inside was a copy of the foreclosure paperwork, the loan purchase agreement, and the original will stamped and dated. She didn't even make it to the 3rd page. "I see," she said, standing. "You've changed." "No," I replied. "You just stopped looking." After she left, I sat on the porch and watched the neighborhood pass by. Kids on bikes, a man walking his dog, a woman jogging past in neon shoes. Normal life. Right outside a house that had been the eye of a quiet war. I took a sip of cold coffee and thought, they have no idea what this place cost me. But some people did. Within a month, the Millard Legacy Fund had its first applicants, a woman named Delia, whose husband took out a second mortgage without telling her. A father of 3 laid off just before his adjustable rate loan ballooned. A retired teacher being sued by her HOA for late fees she couldn't cover. Each one came with a folder, a story, and a look I knew too well. Like life had sucker punched them and no one else noticed. We helped them all. Microloans, workshops, referrals to real estate attorneys who didn't charge like vampires, and best of all, a place to talk. Right there in the living room where Dad once kept a lazy ceiling fan and a stack of National Geographics. Now it held folding chairs, coffee mugs, and people trying to survive the system. So, one evening, Grace leaned on the door frame and said, "You know what this house is now, right?" I looked up from my paperwork. "What?" She smiled. "It's not revenge anymore. It's resistance. It was bound to happen eventually." The letter came on a Monday. Thick paper, fancy header, gold embossed seal from an office in Winston County. Kyle was suing me. "Emotional damages, procedural misrepresentation, undue hardship," the letter said. I had to laugh. This from the man who once told me eviction was just business. I read the packet twice, sipping black coffee like I was watching an old sitcom rerun. Grace looked at the envelope and said, "Is this real?" "As real as Kyle's ego," I muttered. He wasn't challenging the foreclosure. He couldn't. But he was trying to claim I'd targeted him, unfairly used insider knowledge, and emotionally manipulated a family situation to gain financial advantage. I called my attorney, a woman named Camille, who ran her firm out of a strip mall but had a courtroom win rate that scared people in tailored suits. She read through the brief in 20 minutes and said, "He's fishing. What's he hoping to catch?" "A settlement," she said. "He thinks you'll pay him to go away." I didn't even blink. "Let's go to court." The hearing was set for early summer. I showed up in my best suit, gray plain, nothing flashy. Kyle wore one of those shiny numbers with lapels like armor. His hair was slicked back. He smiled at me in the hallway like we were cousins at a reunion instead of enemies at war. "Still mad, huh?" he said. I didn't reply, because nothing I could say would hit harder than what was about to happen inside that courtroom. Camille laid it out clean. The legality of the mortgage purchase, the default timeline, the fact that he received multiple notices and ignored all of them, and the kicker, we submitted the original will as evidence, handwritten, notarized, dated before Kyle's forgery. The courtroom went still when the judge picked it up. He looked at Kyle, then at me, then said, "Mr. Boone, I see no wrongdoing here. In fact, I see resilience." Kyle looked like he'd swallowed a stapler. The case was dismissed. No settlement, no damages, no appeal. Just the sound of justice landing like a soft hammer. What? Outside the courthouse, Kyle followed me to the parking lot. "You didn't have to do this," he muttered. "You could have just let it go." I turned to him. "No," I said. "You could have not stolen from your own blood." He opened his mouth, probably to blame Dad, or me, or the rain. But I was already in the car, and this time, I didn't look back. The next morning, I opened the fund early, put on coffee, set out the chairs, and added a new line to the office wall under the plaque. For every quiet fight, they said we couldn't win, because we did, and we would again. Summer came in, heavy like it was trying to flatten the whole town with heat. The asphalt shimmered, cicadas screamed, and in that slow melt of July, something strange started happening. People started showing up just to talk. Not clients, not applicants, just people. A retired mechanic who remembered my dad fixing his carburetor back in '92. A teenager who asked if she could do community service hours by mowing the yard. Even the mailman Dave sat on the porch one day and said, "Feels like something's finally right again." That's when I knew. The house was no longer just mine. It had become ours. I set up a drop-in night every Thursday. No forms, no judgment, just people talking about what scared them, what confused them. Reverse mortgages, bad landlords, rising rent, missing paperwork. Property tax lien stuff you'd never admit at a dinner party. I kept a whiteboard in the living room, wrote one sentence across the top. "This is what they don't want you to know." Underneath it, a new question each week. "What's one housing rule that's never been explained to you?" By the end of the first night, the board was full. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a crash course in survival. One Thursday, an older woman named Eloise brought a tin of lemon bars. She stayed behind afterward, waiting until everyone else left. "Do you remember me?" she asked. "I didn't," she smiled. "I taught you in 5th grade. You wrote a story about building a fort in your backyard. Said you were going to live there forever." I laughed. "I guess I'm halfway there." She looked around the room, then said something I'll never forget. "Your father would be proud. Not because you fought back, but because you didn't become him." I blinked. "Oh, what do you mean?" She leaned in. "He would have torched the place. You rebuilt it." That night, I walked out to the backyard and looked up at the stars, thought about Dad. Thought about the kind of man he was, tough, simple, maybe too blunt for a world that liked everything polished. Then I thought about me, and for once, I didn't feel like I was living in his shadow. I felt like I was casting one of my own. Grace handed me a manila folder the next morning. "New application," she said. "A foreclosure in Dyer's Hollow. Elderly couple. House was tied up in legal limbo. No kids. No internet access. No idea what to do. Think we can help?" she asked. I flipped through the pages, smiled. "Yeah," I said. "Let's bring them home." The Dyer's Hollow house was a ghost, not in the spooky sense, in the forgotten sense. Paint peeling like sunburn, mailbox rusted shut, ivy swallowing one whole corner like it was reclaiming lost ground. But the minute I stepped onto the porch, I knew it was the same kind of quiet, the kind that asks for help without ever raising its voice. The couple, Frank and Marlo, were waiting inside, both sitting on matching recliners, holding hands like they were bracing for impact. "We don't want charity," Frank said immediately, voice gruff. "You're not getting it," I replied. "You're getting strategy." They looked at each other, then nodded. Grace and I spent the next 3 weeks diving into their paperwork. Turns out the house had been refinanced 3 times. The last broker used language so dense, it looked like it came from a spell book. Marla had signed a balloon clause by accident. Their payments had tripled in 18 months. They were 2 weeks from foreclosure. "Do you think we're going to lose it?" she asked me one night, her eyes more tired than afraid. I said no, because they don't know who you've got in your corner now. And I meant it. Ma, we called in a contact, a mortgage litigator named Jenny, who owed me a favor. She found the breach in the paperwork. Tiny, technical, but enough. The foreclosure was frozen within 4 days. Frank called me voice cracking and said I never thought someone would fight like that for us. I told him, that's the whole point. And it was... That wind made waves. More letters arrived. More knock-knock-knocks at the door. People with stories that sounded too much like mine. Siblings fighting over estates. Widows buried in debt. Tenants whose landlords ghosted them mid-lease. The system was devouring people in silence. We were the first to say not anymore. I started keeping a notebook, not for legal notes. For names. People we helped. People we saved. People the banks forgot. Every name got a line. Every line reminded me I wasn't just fighting Kyle anymore. I was fighting the machine that made Kyle possible. And every time we won, I imagined him watching. One day a postcard arrived. No return address. Just a photo of the old house. My house before the porch was painted black. On the back, 4 words. You really did it. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Didn't know if it was Kyle. Didn't need to. Because whether he meant it or not, he was right. The first media request came from a tiny local radio show, Voices of the Valley, or something like that. I almost ignored it. But Grace said, this is how the story spreads. So I sat in a tiny booth that smelled like old coffee and microphone foam facing a host with oversized headphones. And an earnest smile. She asked about the fund, the foreclosure, the lawsuit, even about Kyle. I kept it simple. I didn't set out to ruin anybody, I said. I just wanted to get back what was stolen and help others do the same. After the interview aired, our inbox tripled. I started spending more time at the fund than at home. Not that I really had a home anymore. I still kept my apartment across town, but it felt more like a storage unit with running water. The house, Dad's house, was where everything real happened now. Coffee in the morning with Grace sorting through applications. Chairs scraping floors as volunteers set up for the next workshop. The hum of the printer. The occasional creak in the hallway that sounded too much like Dad saying, "You're doing okay, kid." Then one night I got a call, blocked number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. It was Kyle. His voice was flat tired. "Don't hang up." I didn't. He said he was living in a rental an hour outside town, had been bouncing from job to job, said he'd been thinking a lot, said I didn't know how bad I'd screwed you until it was too late. I didn't say anything. He added, "I'm not asking for anything," then paused. "But if there's a way to make it right, I'd want to." I told him about the fund, not as a pitch, just the facts. He listened, then said, "You ever take donations?" I said yes. He said, "Okay, don't expect anything big." 3 days later, a money order arrived. $1,000, no name, just a note in all caps, for people who need a second chance. I didn't tell Grace where it came from, just added it to the ledger, labeled it Anonymous Redemption. That night, I wrote a new message on the whiteboard. It's not about getting even, it's about getting free. And for the first time in years, I felt like I finally had. The porch became a landmark. Not officially, but unofficially it was the place people passed and nodded like they knew something sacred had happened there. Grace joked we should put up a sign, "Revenge served here," hot or cold. I told her we'd need a bigger porch. Every week, new faces showed up. A roofer who lost his tools in a lien dispute. A woman who paid rent for 3 years, only to find out the landlord hadn't paid the mortgage once. Even a guy who built tiny homes for veterans, but got sued by the city for zoning violations. They all came in with fire behind their eyes and left a little lighter, not because we fixed everything, but because they weren't alone anymore. I kept the notebook going. By then, it had dozens of names. Next to each, I started adding a one-line story, something that captured what we did. Marla and Frank kept the porch light on. Eloise still teaching, just without a classroom. Derek proved even builders need a blueprint. And next to my dad's name, I finally wrote something too. Millard Boone left tools, not wounds. On a quiet Friday morning, a package showed up, wrapped in brown paper. No return address. Inside, a picture frame. The photo. Me and Dad on the roof years ago, hammering shingles. We're both grinning like idiots. The frame had a brass engraving at the bottom. You brought it home. I stared at it for a long time, then hung it on the wall near the kitchen, right where he used to keep the keys. Grace caught me standing there. You okay? She asked. I nodded, but didn't say what I was really thinking. That somewhere, someone had watched all of it unfold. And maybe, just maybe, they were proud. That night, I sat on the front steps as the sun dipped below the trees. Fireflies blinked like lazy stars. I breathed in the warm air and let myself feel it something between grief and gratitude. Because what I built here wasn't just a fund. It wasn't even just revenge. It was proof that you could be wronged. Completely, utterly, brutally, and still come out with your name on the deed and your soul intact. Fall snuck in like a polite guest. Cool mornings, soft light leaves collecting in little rust-colored piles along the curb. The house looked different in autumn, warmer somehow, like it had finally settled into its new role, wearing its age, with quiet confidence. We started calling it the Millard House. People just picked up the name. The old Boone place became something more than a landmark. It became a symbol, a reminder that even a place soaked in betrayal could become a lighthouse if you rewired the power right. One afternoon, Grace poked her head into my office. Mail's weird today. I looked up. She handed me a cream-colored envelope with no stamp, just my name in cursive. Inside, a single slip of paper, typed, "Thank you for not becoming what they expected." That's real power. That was it. No name, no return address, no clue, just truth. I taped it to the side of my desk, right under the photo of me and Dad on the roof. Good. That weekend, I got a call from Camille, my lawyer from the foreclosure case. "Remember the Jenkins property?" she asked. I vaguely did some convoluted case with an inheritance dispute and a reverse mortgage gone sideways. Well, she said, turns out the executor of that estate heard about you. Wants to talk? About what? Giving you the house? I laughed. Come again. They want to donate it. No heirs, no strings. Just give it to the fund. I didn't know what to say. Camille said, "You're building something people trust." That's rare. I swallowed hard and said, "We'll take care of it." The Jenkins property became our second official site. Same model, same promise. Different town, new porch, new coffee mugs. Grace said, "You ever think this would happen?" I said every single day, and I meant it, not in the arrogant way. In the I had to believe it or I'd fall apart way. No, we held our first outreach event that winter. Community center. 200 people showed up. I told my story on stage. Not the whole saga, just the part that mattered. How I lost everything, how I rebuilt it, and how anyone in that room could do the same, if given a shot. Afterward, a young woman came up and said, "I didn't think anyone would understand what I'm going through." I told her I didn't either, until I did, and she smiled like maybe that was enough to hold her up another day. That night, walking back to my truck, I looked up at the stars and thought, this isn't a story about revenge anymore. It's a story about return, about what happens when you refuse to stay buried and rise with plans. Winter didn't come in hard. It drifted in gently like it was knocking on the door, asking permission to stay a while. The frost made the old windows creak, but I didn't mind. Every sound inside that house had a story now, and I knew them all. The fun kept growing. We hired 2 more staff members, turned the old dining room into a shared workspace, even got a local artist to paint a mural on the backyard fence, an abstract version of a roof line, and 2 hands holding it up. We started calling our mission structural dignity, because people didn't just need a house. They needed to stop being afraid every time the mail came. One morning, I found something wedged under the floorboard in Dad's old study. It was behind the second joist, tucked deep, like it had been hiding for decades. An envelope, old yellowed, sealed with brittle tape. My name on the front, inside. A letter in Dad's handwriting. "Travis, if you're reading this, then things didn't go as I hoped." My chest tightened. He wrote about the house, about how he knew someone might come for it if he died without the right protections. He apologized for not trusting lawyers more, for thinking handshakes still mattered in court. But I believe in you. You've got the mind to fight and the heart to know when to stop swinging. That's rare. Don't waste it. I read it twice, then a third time, then sat down on the floor like I was 9 again, and just needed to breathe through something too big. He ended with this: I built this house with my hands. You're building something better with your will. That night, I lit a candle in the living room, not for ritual, just remembrance. And I whispered to the empty air, I found it, Dad, as if he didn't already know. Kyle sent a postcard the next day. Another photo, this time of a quiet road empty. On the back, just 5 words. Hope you keep building, man. I stared at it for a while, then tacked it to the bulletin board under a note from a client who just paid off her mortgage 6 years early. Underneath both, I scribbled, redemption is never louder than survival. Spring arrived like an exhale. The ground softened. The trees leaned into green again. And the Millard house felt different, like it wasn't just surviving another season, but enjoying it. We held our first open house that April, not to sell, to celebrate. A barbecue on the front lawn, tables full of cinnamon rolls, yard games for kids, stacks of paperwork for anyone curious enough to ask what structural dignity really meant. We had volunteers, lawyers, caseworkers, all under one crooked banner that read, "This is what home looks like." Near the end of the event, I noticed a woman standing by the porch steps, mid-40s, denim jacket eyes like someone who'd read too many eviction notices. She didn't talk at first, just watched. Eventually, I walked over and said, "First time here." She nodded. I didn't believe the stories. I smiled. "We get that a lot." She glanced at the house. "You really turned it around?" I shrugged. It had help. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You ever think about running for council?" I laughed, out loud. She didn't. "You've already got people listening," she said. "Might as well make the system listen too." I thought about that for days, not because I wanted power, but because I knew what it meant when someone who's been burned by the system finally says, "You could change it." It's not a compliment. It's a dare. Grace found me on the porch that Friday, sitting with the application packet in my lap. She raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" "I don't know," I said. She smirked. "Then that probably means you are?" I filled it out, not because I thought I could fix everything, but because I was tired of pretending someone else would. And when I signed it, I didn't sign Travis Boone Fund Director. I signed Travis Boone Citizen, because that's what this all came down to. Being heard, being counted, being home. And that night alone in the kitchen, I raised a coffee mug to the ceiling and whispered, "Here's to the ones who thought I'd stay broken," because they were wrong. Election season came with yard signs and awkward handshakes. I wasn't built for politics, too blunt, too tired, too uninterested in wearing ties that cut off circulation. But people showed up to support, not because they cared about slogans, because they remembered what I did when nobody else would. We didn't run attack ads. We handed out flyers that said, "You deserve to stay in the home you built." Simple, honest, kind of like the house itself. Kyle never showed up. Not once. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't look for him at every town hall. Not because I wanted to rub it in. I just wanted him to see it. To see what real power looks like when it doesn't shout. When it listens. When it rebuilds. Election night came. We didn't throw a party. We sat in the living room, just a few of us. Grace, Camille, Frank and Marla even dropped by with homemade cornbread. We watched the results on a secondhand TV. And when the final count came in 52% in my favor, Grace handed me a root beer and said, "Well, Councilman Boone, you better not start wearing khakis." I laughed, and that laugh was all the celebration I needed. A few weeks later, I stood in front of the house before the first council meeting. The porch had been re-stained. The new sign gleamed in the sun. The Millard house. Justice. Dignity. Shelter. I touched the wood with my palm, like I was making peace with every version of myself that had walked through this door. The kid, the broken man, the quiet fighter, and now, the one who could shape the rules instead of just surviving them. That night I wrote one last entry in the notebook. They took the house when Dad died. I brought it back. I made it more, then I closed the cover. Not because the work was over, but because the story was, and maybe, just maybe, it had done what it needed to do. Slow down now. You've made it. 15 parts. One story, one long breath through grief, betrayal, and redemption. Take a moment. Close your eyes and picture a quiet house on a corner lot. The porch light is on. The steps don't creak like they used to. There's a welcome mat that's actually meant, and inside, a life rebuilt. Not flashy, not flawless, but honest. That's what this was always about. Not revenge like the movies, not dramatic takedowns or roaring speeches. Just one man refusing to stay broken, one son keeping a promise, one soft, steady voice saying, "You don't get to erase what we built." So if someone ever tries to take something that matters to you, your home, your name, your peace, remember this. You can go quiet. You can go smart. You can come back with every page signed, every dollar counted, every receipt tucked in your pocket like armor. And when it's over, you don't even have to say, "I told you so." You just sit on the porch you reclaimed and smile, because you made it, and they know it.